Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about how I have abandoned playing Dungeons and Dragons, and embraced journeying with Dungeons and Dragons. You go right, you go left. There'll be a channel that'll tell you how to play Dungeons and Dragons. You're never going to find out how to play Dungeons and Dragons here. You're going to find out here how to journey with Dungeons and Dragons, an experience where every single session that you dungeon master is powerful, unique, and useful, right? What? Powerful, unique, and useful? Yeah, you're right. Most dungeon masters are like, oh, dude, everybody have fun? That's the highest level of achievement they're going to ever get with Dungeons and Dragons, right? And ironically, the best way not to have fun is to seek it, right? That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about Dungeons and Dragons that is powerful, unique, and useful to every single person at the table. You as a dungeon master, and every player you walk away with, every player who sits at a single session with you at that physical table with those physical books, right? They build real bonds as human beings. They walk away with real life lessons, and they walk away an improved human with every session, and they transform with every campaign. That's what we're talking about here. I'm not talking about playing Dungeons and Dragons. You can go to the Dungeon Dudes for that, right? And actually, you know what? I roll hard on the Dungeon Dudes, and the reality is, I don't dislike them. I'm not trying to be dismissive of them. There are people who are looking for exactly what they're talking about. Just, some fun at the table, right? And honestly, if you really want fun at the table, what the heck are you doing with Dungeons and Dragons? There's a million, go get Candy Crush. Who cares, right? I just don't, using Dungeons and Dragons for fun is like using a chainsaw to make confetti. It's not a wise choice. It's just, and honestly, and I really think that's a good analogy, because you got your hand off with a chainsaw. Boy, can you slam into some walls with Dungeons and Dragons if you don't know what you're dealing with, right? So thank you for your patience. All right. So I want to give you, what are the actionable steps I took to abandon playing Dungeons and Dragons and to begin journeying with Dungeons and Dragons. Here's the next one. Okay. You have to find your heartbeat. Okay? You have to find your heartbeat. Okay? All right, let me get into it. So, I'm a human just like you, right? And I have a pulse and you have a pulse. Okay? All humans have a pulse. This organ in the middle of their chest constricts and their blood flows, right? And that's your pulse, right? Not all humans have a heartbeat. Okay? I'm talking not what keeps you standing and walking and consuming and functioning. What keeps you alive? Where does your passion live? What is the thing that you cannot shut up about? I have muggle topics. I'm so excited about Dungeons and Dragons that I've learned over the years that I cannot talk to normal people about Dungeons and Dragons because they don't have the language, they don't have the passion, they don't have the experience, they have no idea what I'm talking about. I can barely talk to people who love Dungeons and Dragons, air quotes, about Dungeons and Dragons because I'm so deep in the weeds on it. Most of the time I can't discuss Dungeons and Dragons. I even get nervous when I meet somebody who plays Dungeons and Dragons because I'm like, I know you ain't got 3 libraries. I know you don't want to talk about, historical things that happened every single year in the history of Dungeons and Dragons, right? I know I have to be careful when I talk about Dungeons and Dragons because my passion is so high. I'm so intense and adamant about Dungeons and Dragons that it scares people, right? So I have to be very careful how I talk to people about Dungeons and Dragons. It is my heartbeat. What's the rhythm of it? How often does my heart beat? Okay, so I'm going to tell you how how I stopped playing Dungeons and Dragons and began journeying with Dungeons and Dragons, and that is the D&D canon hardbacks, right? But I want to explain how if somebody chose to go down this path with me, how would you do it? The bare minimum is the D&D canon hardback, right? I don't choose to buy new D&D canon hardbacks. It's assumed, right? And I don't buy them because, is this going to be a good adventure? Are they going to do a good job? You can go kick rocks, you sorry, sad sack purchaser, right? I love Dungeons and Dragons. I hear this ridiculous statement from people, and it offends me. It offends me, right? Like, okay, if you're not buying every D&D canon hardback that comes out for every edition, from when you were born until when you die, you don't know Dungeons and Dragons. And there are just innumerable... Wait, peace and joy, brothers and sisters of the icosahedron. All right, let's get into it. All right. I don't decide to purchase D&D canon hardbacks. I will buy every D&D canon hardback until the day I die. Period. End of sentence. Doesn't matter who made it. Doesn't matter when it came out. Doesn't matter how much it costs. Right? And I will have failed as a person if there ever reaches a point where I can't buy a D&D canon hardback. And when I get it, I'm not going to say, "Oh, was this a good one? Was this a good adventure?" Right? Is this going to be useful at my table? There's fools out there who do reviews of D&D canon hardbacks, right? Like what they like. I just saw this over on the Alexandrian. What a ridiculous, useless website. Dude took a month and a half to do a review on Dragonlance: Shadow of the Dragon Queen, and the first word of it, the first sentence is meh. You sad sack, horrible reviewer, right? D&D canon hardbacks are my heartbeat. They drop every 3 months, and my heart beats every 3 months. It's what keeps me alive. It's what keeps me passionate. It's what I can never, ever walk away from. It's my heartbeat. My heart beats at the rhythm of the drop of the D&D canon hardback. Right? I will never decide to buy one again. I live to buy them, right? I want to be on this earth as long as possible so I can buy another D&D canon hardback. And you sad sack, horrible reviewers who sit and go, "Oh, is Strixhaven worth purchasing?" It's because you're like, "Oh, this is just a game. It's just some fun," right? For me, it is the history of human intellectualism. Human emotionality, human spirituality is being borne out with every D&D canon hardback. Those books are functional to supply sessions, functional to supply campaigns, but every single one of them carries the only true record of Dungeons & Dragons history, right? What's the history of Dungeons & Dragons if you look on D&D Beyond and you look at the Strixhaven book? You don't know it because it was changed. Right? And there's no changelog on what changed on D&D Beyond's D&D Beyond's Spelljammer book. Spelljammer. Something changed in Spelljammer, right? About 2 weeks after it was released, the Spelljammer D&D Beyond book changed. Do you know its history? I know the history. I know what's in Spelljammer. Adventures in Space, and I know what was removed. That is a historical event in Dungeons & Dragons history. And if you didn't buy it on day one, you don't actually know the history of what happened in Dungeons & Dragons. You don't know the lesson that Hasbro learned, right? And how that day, when they figured out what went wrong in Spelljammer, how they grew, right? And I grew. And I was like, oh man, that was a cultural mistake. That was a cultural misstep, right? And I grew when they learned that, and they grew when they learned that. And you might not even know what I'm even talking about, because you don't buy D&D canon hardbacks to live. It is not your heartbeat. The D&D canon, you have a pulse. I have a pulse. I have a heartbeat. Do you have a heartbeat? My heartbeat is the D&D canon hardback. It drops. It is the true record of human progression. Right? And fools run up on here talking about D&D and haven't bought a book in 5 years. You know nothing of Dungeons & Dragons, and how dare you speak its name. You know nothing. If you're not buying every D&D canon hardback, hold on. Count it all joy, brothers and sisters of the icosahedron. If you aren't buying every D&D canon hardback, you don't know Dungeons & Dragons history. You don't interact with it as an entity. You know nothing of it. And you shouldn't speak its name, because you're ignorant. If you want to journey with Dungeons & Dragons and stop playing Dungeons & Dragons, the D&D Canon hardback needs to be your heartbeat. Now, I know it's financially challenging, okay? It's okay. If you want to do this, if you want to walk down this road, you don't need to go get every single D&D Canon hardback that ever existed. Now, I'll tell you right now, if any of my ideas ever pop and I become a millionaire, I'll own them within a week. I'll own every single D&D Canon hardback that ever existed. Right now, I own every D&D 1E D&D Canon hardback. Took me months to do it, right? Right now, I own 85% of the D&D 5e Canon hardbacks, and I'm blessed to own, and of course, I own every DMG, every PHB, and every MM in every single edition. And I own it in even editions you don't even know exists. I guarantee that, right? Dungeons & Dragons complexity is so high, and I get so tired of people coming along and just spouting utter nonsense. Just people who haven't bought a Dungeons & Dragons Canon hardback in 5 years saying they know anything. You know, declaring their ignorance and speaking Dungeons & Dragons, they don't even deserve to speak those words out of their lips. Their ignorance is so thick, right? They're marinated in their ignorance. If you're not buying every D&D Canon hardback, you do not know it. Right now, this is financially challenging. What do you have to do, right? You have to buy the 5e, the D&D now, right? And if you listen to this video 6 years from now, and there won't even be a new. You'll get by 6 years from now. You'll buy D&D 5e, PHB, MM, and PHB. So you have to buy the physical. And by the way, everything I'm saying, D&D Beyond don't count. You got to buy the physical, right? So you buy if you want to walk this path today. You buy the D&D. The D&D 5e, PHB, physical, same MM, same DMG. 5e DMG, 5e Monster Manual, D&D, red ampersand on the side, physical, okay? And then simply buy every single D&D Canon hardback that comes out. That's enough. That's enough to journey through, right? Because I know not everybody has the same money, right? You know, I don't have the same money to own every D&D Canon hardback that ever existed. However, right, that's the other thing that's exciting is, when I have extra money, I will buy a D&D Canon hardback from the middle, right from D&D 2e, D&D 3e, D&D 4e. That helps me understand D&D now, right? And it's an extra beat. It's an extra beat of my heart, it's powerful, right? And it is powerful, unique, and useful. You have a pulse. I have a pulse, right? I have a heartbeat. Do you have a heartbeat? My heartbeat is the rhythm of the D&D Canon hardback drop. That's what it takes to abandon playing Dungeons & Dragons and begin journeying with Dungeons & Dragons. Are you ready? I've bushwhacked the path. Are you willing to follow? Every single word of that is my humble opinion. What's important is when I can hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments and send your traffic, please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.